No, I don't. Not right now. I mean, if it was, if it turned into something different, like right now the contract I'm on is fairly small. So, if it turned, into something different, but I'm definitely like chasing my own.
Mona discusses the similarities between herself and Melyssa Ford, as well as the specifics of her contract with Joe Budden. For those of you who are unaware, Mona joined a podcast and spoke about her integration into the Joe Budden Podcast during an interview. I think it was the Comma Club. Check that out then. You may view the entire thing by clicking the link I've included in the bio. However, she made a very astute statement when she claimed that her contract with Joe Budden was not particularly long. I was somewhat taken aback by that, as she claimed to have won the bag in one of the episodes, which was probably her first as a full-time co-host.
Shout out to her. I think she deserved it.
However, that is now. Does this argument contradict itself? Is she attempting to give a different presentation on television? What does fairly small mean to her? To be down with the show, Joe must have paid her a hefty fee. She was, after all, his favorite. Additionally, Mona stated that she is pursuing her own. That implies that she is attempting to get additional bags. Furthermore, she didn't indicate. She departed from Breakbeat Media. It was a huge event when she announced this on the broadcast. I was curious about her agreement with Breakbeat Media, She hadn't posted there in a while. I observed she is clearly making a lot of career decisions, but she goes beyond that, in her opinion, with her appearance on the Joe Budden Podcast. She said that no one would attempt to harm her. She will therefore fit in better on the Joe Budden Podcast.
I'll do better because I'm ugly and they won't try to...
What? For one.
That really disturbed me, since she seemed to be indicating that Melyssa Ford experienced the same thing. Furthermore, it was genuinely insane for Mona to make this comment after Melyssa Ford vanished. She is sharing her thoughts about Melyssa Ford's lack of success on the show, and it's probably not a healthy thing for her to lean toward that. She also mentioned that she had previously listened to the podcast like she always does. This implies that she is making this assumption based on her ignorance about Melyssa Ford's role on the show. And if I were Joe, I would be saying, dude, you don't want to shield your co-host. Since it appears that someone on the inside thinks Melyssa Ford was the victim of sexual harassment and that everyone on the program wanted to sleep with her, you can't be putting that out there. For example, I don't believe that everyone on the broadcast was attempting to discredit Melyssa Ford. Although I don't believe everyone, I do believe there was someone. She therefore somewhat damaged the show's reputation, gave the impression that the program was a patriarchal space full of testosterone-craving men who were incapable of treating attractive women. The problem with the Joe Budden Podcast is that although they frequently discuss how they are, making and all of this other stuff, the way they treat women on the show isn't necessarily superior to how women are typically discussed in these alpha male-read, communities. However, it remains to be seen if Mona retracts her statement. Furthermore, I believe that she wasn't in the ideal position to simply go on the show and adopt that position. Additionally, I saw that she is already evolving and making an effort to blend in. She seems to be growing accustomed to constantly being disconnected, and I am aware that this is a shock to her system because in previous podcasts she was allowed to speak freely throughout $1 million worth of game. She could go all the way on whatever subject she wanted. We'll have to see if she can pull it off, but I can tell she's giving it her all. Joe Budden ought to try to place her in a situation where she is part of a small cast, in my opinion. I believe it is unjust to her type of presence to drown out her voice with so many people, so perhaps just like Mona, Ice, Mark, and Joe, see if she can function better without 6, 7, or 8 co-hosts. And I believe that Joe's ability to go for 3 hours is the reason he has so many co-hosts. Although he frequently claims that he wants to give them vacation time, I believe Joe enjoys creating lengthy episodes with a lot of substance, even if it takes away from the actual dialogue. There are moments when you have to give it to Joe and Rory for their time in the past, even though they only recorded twice a week. It speaks well of them that they were able to have a 3-hour podcast that was jam-packed with genuine talk on most days. During this conversation, Mona also mentioned that she would be reading the comments and being really involved. She mentioned in a recent episode how her algorithm basically changed and it was no longer about her, only the Joe Budden podcast was showing up on her social media timeline. I wonder how long she can handle it. If you can't recall, think back to when Flip mentioned that it was startling for him to watch how the talk shifted from him to Joe Budden once he joined the show. And that's something that individuals from their own backgrounds find frightening, isn't it? They didn't have a career in the media. Mona, Mark, and Flip did. When I join this podcast, it feels like when I go into the public, people know me most for the Joe Budden Podcast. They are all essentially saying, just appearing on the Joe Budden Podcast, not Flip the Network, CNN, or the Don't Call Me White Girl program. It was intriguing to observe Mona in a new role that allowed her to talk. We'll also observe the podcast's response. The most important thing to remember from this interview was Mona's statement that the Joe Budden program offered her a relatively modest contract. Even so, what does that mean? And what does that mean? Furthermore, she has only been on the show for a short time before she begins making these remarks. Are you distraught already? She added that she would not be relocating to Jersey. She's not even thinking about it. That only serves to demonstrate that, at least in her opinion, the money isn't that important to her. I got the impression from watching this interview that Mona kind of likes being on the show, but I also think that some remorse is already beginning to creep in, and I believe that she regrets losing her power to take charge. Her speech has been somewhat muffled, and I doubt she ever imagined herself in such a situation again. In this interview, she even admits that she was on the verge of leaving when things became serious, but the Joe Budden podcast pushed the issue. Additionally, several of the channel's supporters sent me direct messages saying things like, "Hey, I went to see her perform, and when she announced it, she didn't really seem excited to be part of the Joe Budden podcast, and since so many individuals are vying to be on that show, that is uncommon. I'm not sure, but I'm positive that angry people are probably attacking Joe with the words, 'Yo, I can't. Hey, try me out.' It can be members of the industry. Additionally, it can be many of the pod's pals, Ashley Witherspoon, or anyone from Joe Budden background." Do you recall Ashley? She would undoubtedly be speaking differently than Mona up there. Joe added that to his statement, "Sasha will return." At first, I assumed Sasha was merely a passing fan of Patreon, but it looks like she wants to be a permanent member. And occasionally, I wonder how long Mona will be on this program. She is truly enjoyable to me. I've mentioned this before. So far, so good, I believe. Her inability to fit in, however, might be more psychological than the Joe Budden podcast. But please share your thoughts on Mona's remarks on the contract discussion. If you think she erred when she said that she's probably going to work on the show because no one will want to smash her because she's uglier than Melyssa Ford, please let me know. Even yet, I don't believe that's how logic operates when people collaborate. Regardless of one's appearance, anything may happen, particularly in testosterone-fueled settings like the Joe Budden show. Mona might hook up with someone. Who knows?